DHS says that CBP officers shot and wounded a woman in Chicago yesterday after, they say, she allegedly rammed a law enforcement vehicle and agents were boxed in by multiple cars. The spokesperson for DHS, Tricia McLaughlin, accused Chicago police of leaving the scene and refusing to assist agents in securing the area. What do you know about this incident? Were federal agents boxed in and assaulted?
So here, it's really hard to know exactly what the facts are, and they won't let us access the facts. They are just putting out their propaganda, and then we've got to later determine what actually happened.
Please disperse. Nothing to see here, please.
So today we have a prime example as to why you simply just can never trust Democrats, especially when they try to rebrand themselves to a more moderate image. Because in literally yesterday's video, which I encourage you to go watch because it provides a lot of useful context to this story, we were covering how the Broadview Chicago Police Department had basically reversed its own sanctuary city policy, which is to say that finally, for once, they were allowing state and local police to do their jobs and respond to the many weeks of violent anti-ICE riots that we had been seeing at that ICE facility. And that's exactly what they did. They arrested dozens of people. In the process, they actually calmed down the situation. And I thought it was a prime example of how when local police make a conscious choice to shut down on left-wing violence and riots, it is actually pretty easy and it can be done in the span of hours, which is to say, when they don't do that, when they allow the chaos to happen, yes, indeed, that is a conscious choice by local leaders, but it was certainly news to be celebrated. At the same time, it was a little bit of a shocking decision, was it not? Hey, why are Democrats suddenly reversing on Sanctuary City? Why are they suddenly now allowing police to go in and help defend ICE facilities from civil unrest? Well, much like when we posed this question with the Portland PD, you have to ask, how much of that is real and sincere, or is it a performative show to convince the rest of America, especially Donald Trump, that the situation is perfectly fine? It is not violent whatsoever, and we're all handling it. You don't need to send the National Guard because, after all, it's just like this right here.
Please disperse. Nothing to see here, please.
Yeah, exactly, right? Now, keep in mind, it hasn't been all that long. It was only on Friday where the Broadview Chicago police started to finally arrest people. But we've already gotten an answer to that question. Because just 24 hours later, it turns out, the Chicago police not only went back to upholding the same old sanctuary city policy of not responding to 911 calls and allowing violence to keep happening on behalf of the left toward ICE facilities, but the result here was not just another riot. It turns out it was an attempted armed terrorist attack against ICE officers. A situation where someone was basically trying to shoot at ICE. ICE had to return fire defensively. And yet, even more still, this is where the scandal truly breaks out. The Chicago police were directly ordered by the 911 dispatch to still not respond to the scene. Keep in mind here, gunshots were exchanged. Someone got shot. And the sanctuary city policy is so insane, they're saying, nope, that's not our problem, apparently. Even if it's happening on our own city streets, keep in mind, this did not happen exactly like inside the hallways of the ICE facility. DHS and the federal government has a limited capacity to respond when it comes to, driving through the city, for example. And so, as I posed with Portland, you have to ask the question here. Okay, so what exactly does it mean when the local government is intentionally setting out an explicit policy? Keep in mind, this is not about incompetence or, we didn't get there in time. No, they're actively telling the police not to stop left-wing violence. Well, by proxy, in my eyes, that directly means the local government is endorsing and sponsoring left-wing violence, which, by the way, when you look at a city council like Portland, is literally the case. So then what is to be said when the local government is sponsoring violence against the federal government? That is nothing short of an insurrection. You wonder why I keep using that word? You wonder why I say invoke the Insurrection Act? Well, if Portland was not enough, this is a prime example of that here today. So I want to tell you not just about this horrific attempted, luckily failed, but still really bad armed terror attack against ICE, but furthermore, what exactly is going on here with the Chicago police? Because apparently sources inside of the Chicago Police Department, like the actual officers, are really pissed off at the way this is all going. They don't appreciate the way their leadership is guiding them, but they've apparently gone to Fox News here anonymously and explained what has happened. We'll also show you the 911 dispatch and much more. So again, violence against ICE already happening, the most 24-hour performative fake show of Democrat law and order of all time. Now we're back to the regular reality in Chicago where the left wing is being violent and the police are doing nothing, and it is an anarcho-tyranny indeed. Hey, JB Pritzker, you keep trying to do these videos about how, oh, Chicago is so safe. Yeah, not for ICE. Because your police, oh, we have law and order. That's a right-wing conspiracy theory. They're lying about the crime statistics. No, you're lying about your own police policy, and we have the proof. So that said, guys, we'll get into it. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is not only the best way to support our videos, but it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And that said, so here is the news from DHS themselves. Keep in mind this was on Saturday, but this morning during routine patrolling in Broadview, in the same area of Chicago that law enforcement were assaulted yesterday, our brave law enforcement officers were rammed by vehicles and boxed in by 10 different cars. By the way, we'll show you proof later in this video that this has been a recurring thing that is happening in Chicago. ICE will do a raid, they'll go off, and then you see a bunch of lunatics trying to chase them in their cars, which I once again asked to the Democrat politicians and all the pundits who defend these people all the time online, is that also free speech, right? It's a form of political protest to chase someone in your car way over the speed limit and then to ram them in, box in the cars, and then try to shoot at them and unalive them, right? Which is literally what happened here. Again, so, you know, let's not forget, we're talking here about yet another example of left-wing terrorists attacking ICE. And by the way, keep in mind everything we've seen in the past month or so, just adding to the string of the violent left in this country, which is widespread, first of all, and secondly, once again, is abetted and allowed, if not openly endorsed, by Democrat politicians. Because keep in mind, you know, the police won't even respond to this? Okay, so what does that say about Brandon Johnson, about the mayor of Broadview, about JB Pritzker himself? Invoke the Insurrection Act. That's what I'm going to say. I'm tired of it. But anyways, agents were unable to move their vehicles and exited the car. One of the drivers who rammed the law enforcement vehicle was armed with a semi-automatic weapon. I wonder what was going on there, right? I'm sure, you know, according to Pritzker, it's a mostly peaceful car accident. You know, the federal government is lying, you know? No, we obviously know what was going on here. We understand the tactic, right? Box them in and then try to shoot them, you know? It's a hit. That's exactly what it is. It's an attempted hit against ICE. Law enforcement was forced to deploy their weapons and fire defensive shots at an armed U.S. citizen who drove herself to the hospital to get care for the wounds. The armed woman was named in a Border Patrol intelligence bulletin last week for doxing agents and posting online saying, quote, "Hey, to all my gang, let's F those mother effers up. Don't let them take anyone." So yeah, needless to say, there's no secret. This person was a left-wing, crazy lunatic activist, radically anti-ICE. She's one of the many people, by the way, who made repeated online threats against them. Which, first of all, begs the question as to me, why the doxers and especially the people who make threats are not getting arrested. You know, I just saw a story out of Texas recently where some right-wing lunatic guy threatened to attack a pride march to get retaliation for Charlie Kirk. And they got arrested for the online threat. And I said, that's good. You should absolutely arrest lunatics who make violent threats against random people. That said, though, why is that guy arrested, but not like the thousands who are constantly making left-wing death threats? You know, there is something of a genuine double standard here, and then there you go, right? It turns out someone who is repeatedly one of these crazy left-wing activists, who, by the way, is probably also propped up by someone, if we were to guess, and branded by Democrat politicians as the peaceful protesters. The people doxing ICE, that's just political protest. Once again, another example of someone who made threats and then now is acting upon those threats. So there you go. Common left-wing activist who's also a domestic terrorist. But they say Antifa is just an idea, right? They say it's inappropriate to say that the left is running a domestic terror network in this country. Well, there's another example, right? One of these people who's part of the organized anti-ICE campaign is also shooting at ICE. Yeah, big surprise, big surprise. 50% of the left in this country supports political violence, according to polls. So none of this behavior should surprise or shock you, But, of course, we're welcome to hear constant Democrat politician excuses for all of it. But anyways, thankfully, no law enforcement officers were seriously injured in this attack. Turns out she was not very good at what she was trying to do. Nonetheless, Pritzker's Chicago Police Department is leaving the shooting scene and refuses to assist us in securing the area. Keep in mind, this is Chicago. This is the streets of Chicago. So it's their jurisdiction, right? And this is a theme I've wanted to point out to people. So on one hand, Democrat governors say, no, Mr. Trump, I won't allow you to deploy the National Guard or send federal troops because it's my state. And they always say, oh, we're perfectly handling the situation. But you see, that's not the reality on the ground. So on one hand, they won't allow National Guard to come in. On the other hand, they actively tell their police not to help ICE even in cases of violence. So what is that to say? How are we supposed to interpret that policy? Again, it's very simple. The Democrat Party is sponsoring violence against ICE. And for that ought to be seen as insurrection, again, or many other things. But the time for playing games with this type of stuff is over. The time, by the way, for pretending as if this is any legitimate form of politics or democracy or the American government. No. Again, there is an insurrection being sponsored by the Democrat Party, and it runs very deep. Nonetheless. So if you weren't sure about, say, the federal government claiming the Chicago police are not helping, well, it turns out, as you can see, the 911 dispatch has now been released. And, well, just take a listen for yourself. If you were at all skeptical that exactly what I've been describing, right, they're telling police to stand down when it comes to violence against ICE, and therefore it's their active policy to allow violence against ICE. Take a listen to this for yourself, and then see if you still don't believe me.
All right, and 999, just to confirm, 39th Police in Kedzie, they were saying that they were being surrounded by that large crowd, and they were requesting the police were not sending. I'm waving off all the cars heading to 39th Police in Kedzie.
Again, those are the orders we're being given.
Okay, 10-4. And again, for all the units that we called to go over that way, 39th Police in Kedzie, if you could just hold off 911, 913. 923, 924, 933, 934, just disregard that, 39th Place in Kedzie.
Oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist. Trump is slandering the police departments and the crime policies of blue cities. There's no such thing as a no-go zone. Oh. But there's the 911 dispatch, telling Chicago police, confirming what the federal government was claiming, do not show up to that shooting scene. Yeah, typical. That said, we have more information from Fox News. Quote, 2 longtime ranking Chicago police sources sharply rejected the department's assertion that officers responded to calls for help from ICE agents who were rammed and surrounded by protesters on Saturday, telling Fox News the official statement is, in their own words, quote, cover their ass BS. Right? Because the Chicago police have since said, oh no, we were doing our job. We were doing fine. Listen to the freaking dispatch. I mean, who are you lying to here? We all know what happened. And now people from within the department are themselves saying they're trying to cover their you-know-what. That's total BS, right? Their comments come as Fox News obtained an internal dispatch revealing that Chicago police officers were ordered by their chief of patrol not to respond after Border Patrol agents, called for help, saying they were boxed in and surrounded following a ramming incident outside the city, according to multiple federal and Chicago law enforcement sources. Again, I just don't want people to lose sight of how crazy this is. So it's not surprising someone opened fire. We know exactly why people would try to box ICE officers in. And the same JB Pritzker, who was saying, I will not allow Trump to federalize the city. It's an authoritarian takeover. Look at my video next to the Chicago lake, the Lake Michigan, whatever, whichever Great Lake that is. And it's perfectly safe here. So, therefore, don't send federal troops. Is at the same time allowing his police department to say, no, do not respond to violence. That's why I again repeat, it's not just like a standing down policy, or it's not negligence. Let me put it that way. It's not negligence. They are actively sponsoring this violence. The Democrat Party is, okay? So make of that information what you will. But don't pretend as if this is just some type of, those woke leftists just have really bad crime policy. No. They're sponsoring this. They're endorsing this. They're pushing this. They ought to be held as responsible as the people committing it. Because when you craft policy that encourages it, then what do you expect, right? Anyways, that said, Fox News reviewed the computer-aided dispatch messages sent to police officers by their chief of patrol. The message instructed officers not to respond to a Saturday morning ramming on the southwest side of the city in which an armed woman was shot and agents were boxed in and surrounded. We just played that here for you. But in a statement on Sunday, the Chicago Police Department disputed those claims, saying it wasn't true that officers failed to respond, saying they were on the scene to manage safety and document the incident. Yeah, after the fact? After ICE had already handled it, and then you left early too, Too busy eating donuts, apparently. To clarify misinformation currently circulating, CPD officers did in fact respond to the shooting scene involving federal authorities on Saturday to maintain public safety and traffic control, the department said. Okay. CPD added that the federal authorities are leading the investigation into the shooting, but that officers were present to ensure safety. You did such a fantastic job of it, by the way. Let's show up an hour late. Is that what they did, right? Later that afternoon, police also responded to a separate call involving 2 hit-and-run crashes affecting federal personnel, the department said. Chicago police are claiming they will always respond to anyone who is being attacked or under threat of physical harm, but again, the dispatch video, or audio I should say, disagrees with them. And by the way, the video on the ground disagrees, because they've been standing down week after week as there's a bunch of violence happening at the Broadview ICE facility, right? It's a riot basically every single Friday, and only last Friday did they finally step up and do something. So it's just the gaslighting here is obviously completely insane. But that said, a second-ranking police department told Fox News, source there, I should say, told Fox News, their statement is cover their ass BS. The IR team was called off while they were en route to handle the shooting. The ETs were told to disregard. This is what the actual police officers are saying. I'm so irate that I filed FOIA requests for it last night, the second source added. Thank you very much, by the way. I have never been more embarrassed, I should say, to be a former member of this department with the current leadership in place. I feel for the men and women left behind, forced to work under these cowards as their command channel. One of these sources also provided guidance for interpreting the dispatch audio, explaining that 999 is the watch commander of the 9th District. Quote, initially, they were going to meet a bit of a distance away from the location, obviously to give the proper instructions, the source said. Then he got back on and told them not to go. That is the lieutenant. He was obviously given instructions and changed what he initially said from go there to, quote, do not go there. So again, first he was telling police to respond. Then they realized it was an attack against ICE and they said, never mind, do not show up. This is the sanctuary city policy again. So that said, needless to say, the shooter here, by my understanding, has been taken into custody, which is certainly good news. You can see here 5 people were arrested and charged Saturday in connection with the protests in Broadview, bringing the total to 10 people since Friday. We got to get those numbers up, by the way. And by the way, the National Fraternal Order of Police have indeed condemned the Chicago police commanders for prohibiting rank-and-file officers from aiding ICE agents surrounded by those protesters, saying, and I quote, when an officer calls for assistance, you answer no matter what. Well, of course, that is what would happen in a semi-functional and normal police department, but we know what we're dealing with here. That said, I want to now show you the response of Democrat Illinois Governor JB Pritzker. Because if you still don't believe everything I've been saying about how, the Democrat Party is simply sponsoring this violence and encouraging it, Well, if you were to approach it in good faith, you would look at the fact that, oh, so in my state, this is happening. It's a repeated trend. Now people are getting shot at because of it. Something has to give. Nope. No, Pritzker is still saying to Donald Trump, no National Guard, no federal troops. But at the same time, no police. We're not going to respond and help you. So yeah, again, Democrats, it really begs the question, given the increasing violence that you keep on stoking against ICE, how are ICE agents supposed to stay safe? Because you won't allow National Guard, you won't allow federalization, but you won't allow the local police to do it either. Of course, again, the logical conclusion of that is they want it to happen to ICE, and I don't even think that's a secret at this point. That said, after the shooting, keep this in mind. Take a listen to the response of Pritzker, saying, quote, "This morning, the Trump administration's Department of War gave me an ultimatum. Call up your troops or we will. It is absolutely outrageous and un-American to demand a governor send military troops within our own borders and against our will." Okay, so there you go, JB Pritzker. Thank you for admitting and saying to the world, yes, I sponsor and endorse violence against ICE. That's what you're saying. No more games. No more, oh, you're taking that out of context. You're just in bad faith. No. This is hours after he sat there and witnessed ICE officers get rammed and shot at. By the way, as we'll show you in a second, that's far from the first example in the city of Chicago. Needless to say, there's a lot of violent people in that city that he pretends doesn't exist. Oh, look, I walked on the lake. It's perfectly safe. Okay. And yet still he turns around and says, I won't allow troops. That's authoritarianism. Yeah, guess what? JB, hey, big surprise here. If you got rid of your sanctuary policies and you made it clear, hey, police, you have to respond, which is probably what was really driving on Friday, why Broadview police did something for 24 hours, then we wouldn't have to have National Guard. I've been saying the right wing genuinely does not have this fantasy about, oh, we really want to federalize and send military into cities. No, it's an expensive and complicated necessity when Democrat governors don't cooperate with us. We would very much like to have a stable, functional country where local police works in conjunction with federal police to enforce the laws. But when local police are aiding an insurrection against those laws, and so is the Democrat Party, what is to be said about that, right? And, he goes on to cry about how in the coming hours, the Trump administration intends to federalize 300 members of the Illinois National Guard. Oh, you say that as if that's a bad thing, right? But no, he thinks it's a bad thing because that would make it harder to commit violence against ICE. It really is that simple. It really is that simple. We have this kind of delusion sometimes about liberals that they're just really naive people, right? They just love the flowers too much. They don't understand how the real world works. Well, hopefully now you're realizing they understand perfectly well how it works. It's very simple. They encourage and sponsor and endorse this violence, and that's why their policies seemingly otherwise are so dumbfounding. So he goes on to just go and whine about it, but absolutely no mention, by the way, of the actual ICE officers who were shot. I'm looking for it. No, didn't mention it once. Okay, that's what he was responding to. Doesn't even mention what happened. By the way, the media is playing very similar games. You can see some of these headlines, right? U.S. Border Patrol agents shoot woman in Chicago after they were boxed in by cars. Oh, really? That's what happened. That's what happened, right? Not that woman tries to shoot at Border Patrol and Border Patrol shoots back. Nope, that's how they're covering the story, right? That's from People magazine or whatever. Here you see another one from the Telegraph. Chicago woman shot by ICE after convoy rams officers. Armed woman shot after ramming. At least they admitted this one was armed, but you see the same exact story there going on. And by the way, we'd lastly like to point out, this is not the only example, right? You've seen this repeatedly, as I brought up in the beginning. That is ICE officers being chased in cars by dangerous left-wing lunatics. Again, this is not peaceful protest, yet the Chicago police will not respond or crack down on these people, despite the fact, okay, if you want to make a policy that says we're not going to help the federal government, that's one thing. These people are driving on your city streets. They're endangering your citizens. I mean, I doubt they're even the best drivers, so they could just crash into this person right here and hurt someone, and then, you're just not going to respond because of sanctuary city, right? Just keep that in mind. This is what is going on. This is what the Chicago police are allowing to happen, and they don't seem to be that. They don't believe that to be a problem, right? I'm sure they give out all kinds of speeding and parking tickets in that city, but hey, if you're like speeding after ICE in basically a high-speed chase, perfectly fine, right? That's the two-tier justice for you. That said, Department of Homeland Security have also now confirmed a second violent attack on ICE in Chicago over the weekend. So keep in mind, Pritzker, it's not even just one incident. It just repeatedly keeps on happening, right? A new piece of footage shows yet another ICE vehicle getting rammed in traffic. This assault was a completely separate incident from another attack where federal agents were rammed and boxed in by vehicles. So you can see this is a repeating trend, right, in the city of Chicago. And considering the tactics are basically the same, you see that happening right there, right? Considering the tactics are basically the same every single time, I don't think it's exactly outrageous to believe that, again, this type of stuff is happening in a coordinated fashion, okay? When they say Antifa is just an idea, they're being ridiculous. There are networks. These people talk with each other. They're planning this type of stuff together. And the action against left-wing domestic terror networks, frankly, had to happen yesterday. That said, talking here about another terrorist group, at least this one is now designated, Kristi Noem has revealed to the New York Post recently that the drug cartels are now targeting federal immigration and ICE agents with $10,000 bounties. So, again, you want to look at another driver of not only violence against ICE, but further Democrat policies. That's not much of a mystery. And yet, amidst all of this, in the most dystopian way possible, while they're actively sponsoring violence against ICE, what are we told by the Democrat Party? Nothing to see here, nothing to be afraid of. Why does ICE fear violence? It doesn't make sense. Like, we're all totally peaceful, right? Remember this from Gavin Newsom?
I'll be first in the nation saying enough. ICE, unmask. What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of?
So yeah, I think I've basically made my case, but again, I will just say it is an insurrection, and I hope that people understand the scale of the moment and what's really happening. I'm not sure if the word sanctuary city is even appropriate anymore, right? It should be just seen as like insurrectionist city, basically, as a whole. But anyways, that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.